Welcome back to 1834. Le Bourdonnais is still winning 4 games to 3 and it's the first to win 6 games that will take this 4th match. The last game was a draw, so Le Bourdonnais still has the white pieces. Today's guest commentator is Baldric, and now we have some genuine news from 1834. In October, the Palace of Westminster in London burnt to the ground, and Baldric wants to help out, so he's going to update his profile picture. Let's begin. Le Bourdonnais opens with e4, we have e5 from McDonnell, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, and Le Bourdonnais goes for the Evans Gambit again. Now, in fact, they're just repeating all the same moves as in the previous game, so I'm just going to zoom through them quickly until there's a change. All gentlemen must accept a gambit, and McDonnell, of course, accepts. We have c3 chasing away the bishop, and now castles from Le Bourdonnais. d6, letting the light square bishop out, d4 in the centre from Le Bourdonnais, and we have a pawn exchange. The bishop goes back to b6 and Le Bourdonnais keeps pushing in the centre. This is threatening the knight, so the knight moves out of the way, coming forward. And now we have a knight exchange in the centre. Knight to d2 from Le Bourdonnais, and finally McDonnell plays a different move. Last time McDonnell played knight to e7, we had knight to f3, the queen came out to d6, and then Le Bourdonnais was able to build up a lot of pressure on the queen side heading towards the king. The bishop blocked here, there was an exchange of bishops, and the queen came out, gave another check, the king goes back, and the bishop came out to attack the black queen. So yeah, a lot of pressure from Le Bourdonnais. Somehow McDonnell was able to scramble a draw. This time he doesn't want to give Le Bourdonnais this chance, so he decides to play a different move. He plays his queen to f6, and the game continues. Le Bourdonnais plays as before, knight to f3, and now McDonnell plays knight to e7. We have bishop to b2, which is x-raying the black queen. It's also providing a double attack on this pawn here, so McDonnell defends it with the knight. You can also see that the black bishop here is x-raying the white king, so McDonnell moves it out of the way to h1. Now here, Baldric suggests castling, but this would be a bit of a mistake because Le Bourdonnais will be able to leverage this x-ray upon the black queen, so perhaps getting the queen out of the way would be a better idea, but nonetheless, McDonnell decides to follow Baldric's advice. And immediately, Le Bourdonnais captures the pawn in the centre, and again, perhaps getting the queen out of the way of this x-ray would be a good idea, but instead, Mad Mac decides that he's going to give up his queen in exchange for some minor pieces. First, he captures. F-pawn comes up and threatens the knight, so the knight captures the light square bishop, revealing the attack on the queen, so the pawn captures. Now, after all that, Le Bourdonnais has a queen for 2 bishops and a knight. There are equal amounts of pawns on the table, although McDonnell's pawn structure is kind of wrecked. So Le Bourdonnais goes on the attack with rook to f3, clearly trying to get on the open file, but McDonnell anticipates this and moves his king across to h8. We have queen to d3, threatening the knight, so that goes back to d6, and we have f5 from Le Bourdonnais. There is a chance for McDonnell to shore up his position a bit here and maybe even gain a very slight advantage. Just get the bishop out of the way and then bring the rook across and then down into the middle of the position, making a very strong fortress. But instead of this idea, Mad Mac wants to start his own attack. He brings his rook across to threaten the pawn on g2, and we're looking quite even again. Le Bourdonnais brings his rook up to f4, we have bishop to d7 connecting the rooks on the back rank, the queen comes across to c3 and threatens the undefended pawn. Now, Baldric suggests manoeuvring the knight back to e8 to defend the pawn, and then maybe on a subsequent move you'll be able to get the knight to a better square, which is actually a good idea, Baldric, well done. But instead of this, McDonnell wants to keep attacking. He plays rook to g7. He wants to bring the other rook across to perform a double attack upon the g-pawn. But all he's done is that he's lost his pawn and pinned his rook, so that's not so great. Nonetheless, McDonnell doubles up his rooks, but it looks very dodgy because the king is completely blocked in and can't move, and the leading rook can't move because it's pinned. Le Bourdonnais continues with rook to h4 and is actually threatening mate here if McDonnell is not careful. For example, if he plays some dodgy move, then he's just going to sacrifice the rook. The leading rook can't move, of course it's pinned, so the king has to capture, and the queen is just checkmating here on h4, this square covered by the pawn. So what does McDonnell do about this? He spots it and he defends with bishop to e3. So how does this work? Well, if you go for the same mate here, sacrificing the rook, it doesn't work anymore because you can block with the bishop. And in fact, McDonnell is threatening his own mates here. I'll just show you a quick line. If you defend the pawn here with the rook, then you attack the queen, and after the queen moves, you capture this pawn with the knight. And should Le Bourdonnais capture the undefended bishop, you get a very nice smothered mate, so very nice. But of course, Le Bourdonnais is not stupid. He's not going to fall for this. Back here, he's not going to go for the mate because obviously it doesn't work. He's going to bring his queen down here to c3 and attack the bishop. So McDonnell retreats his bishop and attacks the rook, so the rook moves across to g4 and McDonnell defends with his f-pawn. Le Bourdonnais attacks the bishop with his h-pawn and McDonnell says, "Alright then, if you take my bishop, I'm going to take your rook," and Le Bourdonnais says, "Okay then, I agree." So the best move for Le Bourdonnais from here is to capture the pawn. This is attacking the rook, and also the queen is nicely lined up behind everything. You're going to get a free check if you advance the pawn. So the only thing for McDonnell to do from here is to give a check, but that's all he's got. This threat is still on. But Le Bourdonnais misses this and instead pushes the pawn, which is a mistake, and McDonnell is now winning. He takes out the base of the pawn chain with the knight whilst also threatening the queen. So the queen captures the c7 pawn to get out of the way, and we have rook to e8. Now here Le Bourdonnais could stop the rot with queen to f4, but instead he plays his rook to f1. Now why was this move important? Well, you might be able to spot that McDonnell now has bishop to b5, which reveals an attack on the queen while simultaneously attacking the rook. So from here McDonnell's advantage is significant. However, he doesn't spot this move and instead advances his pawn, and the moment is gone because Le Bourdonnais does now spot this reveal attack and gets his queen out of there to f4. McDonnell realises this is threatening some nasty business along the h-file, so he gets his king out of there, and Le Bourdonnais does the same. We have rook to e5 threatening the undefended pawn, and Le Bourdonnais defends it by bringing his queen down to e3. Now if the pawn is captured, you're losing the knight. Baldric suggests pushing a pawn, which McDonnell does, but not such a great idea. It's just a wasted move. Perhaps doubling up with the rooks could have been better. Okay, b6 was played, and we continue with queen to d4. A great move here for McDonnell could be bishop to b5 or even knight to f2, but instead he retreats with knight to d6. Le Bourdonnais goes on the attack with queen to h4, looking very mean along the open file, but also attacking the undefended pawn. And McDonnell defends by bringing his knight back to where it was just one move ago. Le Bourdonnais continues with d6, and you'll notice now that McDonnell needs to be extremely careful, as he could get in trouble if he lets the queen back through to c4, because this comes with check. And the game continues with a5 along the wing. And here Le Bourdonnais plays rook to f4 with a double attack upon the knight, but actually McDonnell has many chances here. He can capture the pawn here, which is fine, because after this you're just losing one pawn but gaining another. Or alternatively, if you capture here, the rook is coming down, giving a check. The only move for Le Bourdonnais is to block, and you're doubling up your rooks and everything is good, and you're probably going to win. However, McDonnell didn't play this capturing the pawn move. Instead, he played knight to c3, which is maybe even better because it threatens mate again. For example, if Le Bourdonnais plays some random move, you're going to bring the rook down, you're going to have to block, the knight's coming in with another check, the only move is to get in the corner, and you're getting checkmated. So what does Le Bourdonnais do after this knight to c3 move? Well, of course, he defends straight away with rook back to f1. You'll notice now that the queen has a clear path through to c4, which comes with check, which will be extremely dangerous. So perhaps McDonnell should bring his knight back to block this. But Mad Mac wants to keep on attacking. He plays his knight to e2 with check, so the only move for the king is to move to h1. Again, perhaps a good move for McDonnell would be to bring his pawn to b5, which would protect the c4 square, but Mad Mac wants to keep on attacking. He captures the f5 pawn. So what's he doing here? Well, perhaps he's hoping for rook captures bishop, rook captures rook, and then some random move, and then he's going to checkmate Le Bourdonnais, which seems optimistic. What actually happened during the game? Well, after this bishop captures the pawn move, Le Bourdonnais did indeed capture the bishop with the rook, but at this point McDonnell decided that it maybe wasn't such a great idea to capture back here because queen to c4 is coming. And then you can't move here because it's going to be mate, and if you move into the corner it's going to be check again, and after blocking, which is the only move, you're going to be losing your rook and all of the rest of your pieces, and you're going to lose. So instead of capturing the rook here, he decided to bring his rook back to try to help defend. But this is even worse because queen to c4 is coming anyway, which Le Bourdonnais did play. It's check again, and now there are only two moves for McDonnell. He can either go into the corner or block with the rook. If he blocks with the rook, it's getting captured and you're getting checkmated very quickly. If you move the king aside instead, the rook is coming over to h5, it's check, you can only block, and again it's checkmate, this time with the rook. So after this queen to c4 move, McDonnell finally spotted what was going on and apologised for being such an idiot and resigned the game. So now Le Bourdonnais is winning 5 games to 3, he only needs one more to take this 4th match, so well done to him. I'm sure he stayed up very late drinking and gambling with all of his friends. I'll see you again next time.